What happened to Lynette Hooker? How did she simply vanish in the Bahamas? Okay. Well, we are live. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for watching, and welcome to the Margaret McLean Show. As a former prosecutor, this case really intrigues me on so many levels. I can't even tell you. So I've traveled to this exact location, and I'm skeptical. How could Lynette Hooker, an avid swimmer, just vanish in the shallow waters where I swam? And her husband, Brian, claims she fell off their dinghy and got swept away with the current. There's an unexplained 8-hour gap from the time she fell overboard to the time he reported her missing. Now we have a U.S. Coast Guard criminal investigation. So in this episode, I'm going to break down the Lynette Hooker case through a prosecutor's lens, what investigators are looking for, how maritime law applies, and what it actually takes to establish probable cause in a case with no body and one key witness. The person of interest himself is the key witness, Brian Hooker. What doesn't add up? And if authorities do not have enough evidence for probable cause to bring criminal charges, is there enough for the family to bring a civil lawsuit? So joining me today, I'm very lucky, are two experienced mariners who know these waters well, Captain David Crompton and Captain Damon Sacco. So welcome to the show. I'm going to put them on here. We have, got to put the glasses on. So you can have a seat, Damon. Damon is actually joining me in studio. And here's Damon. And then, of course, here's Dave. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah, well, you want to talk into the, we've got to both share this mic. It's a little awkward, but anyway.
Good morning, David.
Good morning. It's great to see both of you. Maggie.
Yeah.
Professor, tuna slayer extraordinaire, and podcaster. Is there anything you don't do?
Well, I will not surf again. I tried surfing for the first time, and I crashed and burned, and I said, you know what? That's it. I'm not going to surf anymore. But other than that, I'm ready to catch the big tunas this summer.
You caught a wave.
Oh, I caught a wave, and then I crashed and burned.
Yeah, it's the nature of the beast in the surfing game. We all crash and burn.
I know. So what I'm going to do here is first, I'm going to provide you guys with a brief overview of the case, and then we'll talk to my guests. So on Saturday, April 4th, 2026, Brian and Lynette Hooker anchored their sailboat Soulmate on Aunt Pat's Bay in Elbow Cay. They went to Tahiti Beach for the day and later on used their 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy to go to the restaurant at the Abaco Inn near Hopetown. And of course, we all went there together, and we'll talk about that later. So after dinner, around 7:30 p.m., they hopped back in their dinghy to go back to the sailboat when, according to Brian, Lynette fell off the dinghy into rough waters and was swept away by the current. So Brian threw her a flotation device, but was unable to save her. He anchored the dinghy and ultimately rowed 4 miles to Marsh Harbor Boatyard, which took him 8 hours, where he was then found at 4 a.m. on Sunday, April 5th. So, Captain Dave Crompton, I'm going to start with you. You're very familiar with the waters there. Can you describe the area for us?
Sure. I don't pretend to be Magellan, but I have boated in Asia, the Mediterranean, Central America, South America, East Coast, West Coast. And you can't find a place that would be kind of harder to get in trouble from a navigational kind of boating safety standpoint. It's that specific area, not necessarily the Abacos in general, are shallow. They're fairly protected. The route from the Abaco Inn back to the sailboat, which he allegedly took, is fairly protected. Again, not in kind of hurricane context, but in normal conditions context. So seas in that area, maybe a 1.5 foot chop, even in the wind conditions that they were in. And it's relatively shallow. you know, so if you do get in trouble, you can get to terra firma quickly, kind of on either side. And so it's a difficult place to screw up. There's also a lot of ambient light. You have Sea Spray Marina there, Abaco Inn. You have Lover's Island on the western side, which has homes and docks, and so it's the whole thing is very strange. You know, it's sad and tragic circumstances. And when I talk to folks about it, I feel kind of bad because I have a strong bias that this just does not add up. And,
Okay.
So anyway, really, really good to have the chance to talk about it with you guys today.
Yeah. And so tell me, you made this is what I have up is a slide, and it was great that you were able to make this for me yesterday. So I made a slide out of it. So can you describe what you meant by this slide and why Brian's story just doesn't quite add up?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact facts, but based on what I've heard and read and reinforced by what you just said, the box that I drew with the hash marks is the alleged kind of zone where he claimed it happened. You can see the channel on the right there, the 4 or 5 sets of markers. That's coming out directly from the Abaco Inn. So the dinghy would have come out through that channel, taken a left to head down to Aunt Pat's Bay anchorage, which you can see down there in kind of the middle lower part of that chart. And he claims that she fell out somewhere between when they took that turn and headed towards the boat. Now, you can see there's a scale down in the bottom right. That's a 300-yard, maybe at the most, swim in many directions to get back to solid ground, right? And they said they left at 7:30. Sunset that night was 7:40, and total blackness doesn't happen until 8:20, 8:30.
Okay.
They were probably 5 minutes after 7:30. They were making that turn. So they both had good visibility, even if she was in the water and he was in the dinghy, to know exactly where they were.
Okay.
And so, the other thing about that area is it's not much of a tide. I think that it's a knot and a half, maybe 2 knot at the most current. So this notion that she was like swept away so rapidly kind of also doesn't, add up. I mean, 3 of us went right through this area like 10 times that week we were together down there, right? And,
Yeah, we did.
yeah, so you guys know this well.
I think that I think it's the whole being swept away. I agree with you, Dave. There's no way that there's enough current to sweep her away. Maybe because he is in an inflatable dinghy in this high winds, he could have been swept away.
Yep.
He could have been pushed. There was an easterly wind. I read easterly wind coming off the land. They were in the lee, so I'm with you there. Like, it couldn't have been that rough. Maybe a 1-foot chop at most, I'm guessing, because they were that close to land.
Yep.
But the wind is howling. It's coming off the ocean, so there's not much obstruction there. So that breeze could definitely carry him away from her.
Yep.
That I believe.
True.
But it's like, she's a good swimmer, so why wouldn't she just swim to shore? Is my question.
Yeah.
And
I've been trying to think about this in terms of what would I have done if that was Suzanne and I, right? And a lot of times you hear about these cases or you read about them and you try to picture what it was like to be there and what decisions you would make. Well, I don't have to picture anything, right? I've made that trip for the last 20 years. And if Suzanne had fallen out of the dinghy, given where I knew we were, I would have jumped over immediately and gotten her, and we both would have swam together. And I would have grabbed everything that floated out of that dinghy. And I'm sure it had a dock line on it. The other thing you could do is if she went over, immediately grab the dock line, hold on to your hand, and jump in.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I would have done, And so.
I mean, was he a good swimmer? I know she was. She grew up on a lake.
Yep.
She'd been swimming all her life, or most of it. But if he was a good swimmer, I'm with you. Like, I'm a good swimmer. You're a good swimmer. We're all good swimmers here. We all would have jumped in.
Yep.
I couldn't imagine letting Maggie, sink in beneath the waves. Even if, maybe I was telling Maggie earlier, maybe she had a physiological malfunction. Maybe she had an aneurysm. Like, what caused her to just fall out of the dinghy? That's really gray to me. And I don't know if someone here knows any more about that, but you
Well, I can answer that one. I went back through some of the recorded phone calls by Brian Hooker, and based on his account, it doesn't appear that his wife had any issues like with an aneurysm or grasping at her chest. He tried to throw her this flotation device. I think it was an inflatable cushion. She also was wearing the dry bag that had their passports and her phone. Okay, so we're going to talk about that after. But it doesn't appear that there were any issues as far
Yeah.
as her health went. So that just didn't make sense to me. And
Maggie,
what about, tell me about a dry bag. Can you float on that?
No.
Okay.
A dry bag is buoyant, but it's not something you could, use as a life vest or flotation device. It's more to keep, it's an insulating bag to keep things dry.
Generally speaking, if there's a man overboard, you basically throw everything that has a possibility of floating out of the boat in a pretty big area, so that depending on where they are. The other thing is, again, it wasn't pitch black.
Right.
So
Right.
how do you lose sight of somebody that fast? Right.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. The other thing I heard, Maggie, you can correct me, or I don't know if you heard the same thing or not. One of his statements, he said, "The last I saw her, I think she was swimming towards the boat."
Yes.
Yes. But it was conflicting because there is also a story out there where he said she was swimming towards shore.
Yeah.
Did you hear that one?
I did. Yeah. So
that's fishy.
If she got swept away and he couldn't find her, but was able to watch her either try to swim to a boat or swim to shore, and again, get out of the boat and go help her.
Right.
Right.
Oh, and he rode what, 8 miles to Marsh Harbor? If he can row 8 miles, why couldn't he row to save his wife?
That doesn't make sense to me.
Nope. And you guys, you'll be familiar with this, because if you think about Kingman, right, it would be the equivalent of falling in at the edge of the mooring field and trying to get back to the chart room, right?
Yeah.
Even if it
Good
was
analogy.
blowing 20, I'd get on my back, kick my feet, and whistle Jimmy Buffett songs, and I'd be there in 5 minutes.
100%.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing. I mean, you're in the lee. It's almost the same distance. So it just completely doesn't add up.
So for people out there who are not experienced boaters, can you guys describe what in the lee means?
Go ahead, David.
In the lee is simply a term used by mariners to describe an area on the ocean that is basically protected by land. So when it's basically the area where, so if the wind is coming off the land, the ocean, the ocean, the area of ocean that is adjacent to that land is called in the lee. It's protected. It's basically, like for instance, this area that we're talking about, if say it was blowing 15 to 25 miles an hour, you're talking maybe, in the lee, maybe a 6 to 10 inch chop, maybe a foot at most. But as you get offshore, if you go offshore, maybe a mile or two, now you're in a different world. You're not in the lee anymore. So the lee just basically, references a protected area of a body of water that's protected by land.
So it's much easier to swim in those areas.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is I have two, this is kind of interesting, but Brian Hooker called one of his friends, I think a few days after the event, or maybe a day after, I can't remember, but it was a 45-minute phone call where he's just, and it got recorded. All right. So where he's just going on and trying to explain what really happened out there. But it's interesting because these are his own words shortly after the occurrence. So I'm going to play this, and then I want you guys to comment on it. I have two. So here's the first one.
Right. The standard dry bag.
Yeah, it is the standard dry bag. I'm looking at mine right now, which I never had before. When she went over, she also took the house keys. When the cops were here, I had to break into my own boat. I had my phone with me. It had 20% charge. No SIM, no SIM card for the Bahamas. I just wasn't prepared, like I should have been prepared. And that was, this is what comes of that. So I got to get her back and we'll fix all those things, but one thing I did not know is that until my daughter called me today is that this is on the national news, and it's just fucked up. And Inside Edition tried to call me, and I don't. So yeah. Oh, what's so the big thing here? I don't know if it's true where you guys are at, but everybody in Bahamas uses WhatsApp, and I didn't have the ability to text any Bahamas numbers until I got that installed. So, and I had to get Google Fi. I ordered a Google Fi service to get it, using the Bahamas, but you have to turn that on in the United States, right? And then go to the Bahamas, not order it in the Bahamas and turn it on there. It just is not working.
So comment on that. Dave, you may be more familiar, but so, a lot of people are suspect about, oh, he had to get another SIM card. He didn't use WhatsApp. If he had those devices on his phone, he could have called for help right away from that dinghy.
Easily. Yep. They also, I don't know, this was what, a day or so after
Yeah.
he was
He
missing?
seems awful calm.
I would be
Seems awful
on
calm,
the
yeah.
shoreline with bloody feet, running up and down the shoreline, trying to find any sign of Suzanne. He seemed more worried about the fact that, oh my gosh, this is on the national news. And I don't know what he meant by, I need to get her back and we'll fix all these things.
And I also thought a little what was peculiar too is he mentioned the keys. Well, she had my house keys and I had to break into my boat. I heard that as almost like a little cue, like he was throwing it out there, like if I really killed her, I wouldn't have sent her off with my keys. I wouldn't have had to break into my boat. Like, what was that even referenced for?
Yeah.
It was kind of bizarre.
And if he could spend time talking to anybody, I'd be talking to the authorities or search and rescue people or anybody I could get my hands on to say, bring a boat out there and help me find her.
I'd be out there like
I
you,
don't even
walking the
think that.
beach.
Yeah. Crazy.
So one thing that was mentioned in the phone call, because obviously I'm not going to play 45 minutes of it, I will play another clip, but how many little islands are there in that area, Dave? Like that she could actually, maybe she washed up on a little island and she's still there waiting to be rescued.
Well, the problem is, like, if you look at the chart right there, to the northwest, that's where he actually ended up going out and over to Marsh Harbor, right? So
Okay.
if for some reason she drifted out there, that's the Sea of Abaco. I mean, she could show up anywhere to the south. If she came down by Aunt Pat's Bay that goes into Toulouse Cut, if there was an outgoing tide, she could have maybe gone out through Toulouse Cut, but she would have washed up on Toulouse and gotten caught in one of those little tidal pools or something. And then the southern part of Toulouse is where we stayed when we were all together. And then you have Lubbers to the west. So that, that's the other thing. If there was a dry bag, which is generally more buoyant than not, he threw her a life preserver. She was wearing clothes. She had a lanyard. Where are all those things?
Yeah.
Like some.
You're right. They didn't find anything, right?
And not
Right.
even like her total person, or, there's been rumors of sharks or whatnot. They'd find a sneaker or a hat or a jacket or, something, not a trace, which makes no sense whatsoever to me.
Yeah. So how infested with sharks are those waters?
There's a lot of bull sharks there, but I don't know. I mean, you remember going to Tahiti Beach
Yes.
at the Thirsty Cuda. A bull shark will occasionally, kind of cruise by there, but I don't know, probably no more so than any other place.
Yes. So the four of us traveled together. So Damon and I and Dave and Susie. So Dave's wife, Susie, is also a captain, and I know she's listening. So shout out to Susie. But we all went, Damon and I stayed at the Abaco Inn. We went to Tahiti Beach. We swam in these very waters. And actually, the wind was blowing when we went.
Yeah.
So, it was probably blowing, I imagine, around the same, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
It blew the whole time. Yeah.
It blew the whole time. Now, on the other side of the island, it's rough. We walked over there. It's rough, and I wouldn't want to be swimming there. But lee of the island and lee of the Abaco Inn, where they were, where the dinghy, she allegedly fell off the dinghy. I mean, we could have all that wouldn't be a hard swim. I think I could swim to shore pretty easily there.
I don't think he could have dumped the body either. Like there was speculation that, maybe he had time that, with that 8-hour window that he had before he showed up to Marsh Harbor. If it was a murder, planned or unplanned for that matter, and he did try to hide the body, he doesn't have a lot of options there because you'd have to go out through that cut. That Tolu cut is probably the closest access to the ocean, right, Dave?
It is. Yep.
And going through there is treacherous.
Yeah.
In an 8-foot inflatable.
Yep.
So there's no way he went out and said, "All right, I'm going to dump the body so it goes out into open ocean." The other idea I have on this is they do have a tumultuous history of arguing and there's some drunkenness, and there was even an assault and battery charge against her back in like 2015 in Michigan. Let's say they got a little banged up, they had some drinks, and they were in an argument on the way to the sailboat, and and she might have even said, "You know what? See ya, I'm swimming to the boat," and jumped in. I'm speculating here.
Yep.
Because I don't get how you can just fall over. They're in 1-foot seas at most. I just don't buy. She's at the wheel, so she's already hanging onto the wheel. She's holding onto the steering wheel. For her to just fall out of the dinghy is hard to imagine. So I was just like, all right, maybe they got in an argument. Maybe he pushed her. Maybe she said, "Screw you," and jumped. I got the key. I get all the stuff. And then he said, "Fine, see you later." She swam to the boat. He went, elsewhere, and then realized maybe an hour later, like, oh crap, she might not be able to get onto the boat. Because let's say she did swim to the boat and he did get swept away or he went away. I don't know that she'd be able to access that sailboat. I don't know if there's a ladder there. I'd love to know if there's a way for someone to just climb in from the ocean.
Yeah.
Because
True.
I can tell you one thing. I rescued somebody in a mooring field in Monument Beach in the Cape, and the woman was clinging to a rudder. She and her boyfriend had capsized, and she was just clinging in the water, freezing, by the way. And this was summertime, so then you get that to think about too, hypothermia and everything else.
Yep.
Well, Dave, when you and I talked yesterday, you thought that there was a possibility, and I think Susie thinks this as well, that remember, everybody, we have an 8-hour gap between the time she allegedly fell overboard and the time it was reported. So, what if they were on the land and they went to the other side of the island? What would happen if something happened or they got in a fight, she fell, died, and he threw her body off the other side of the island? What would possibly happen there, Dave?
Well, I think if you guys remember that the waves are always really, really strong there. There's a huge undertow. It's always really active, strong, ocean action there. So it's quite, and just north of the Abaco Inn, it's pretty isolated. I mean, there's not a lot there, right? So could have happened there, and much more of a chance of not finding a trace, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's hard to know. I don't remember. I remember the time of the tide, but I don't remember if it was, outgoing around then or not. But
if it was an outgoing tide, so remember, we have an 8-hour gap, and if the tide was outgoing, they're on the other side of the island, let's say there's a body dumped out there with the outgoing tide. He knows the tides, I imagine. He's sailing those waters. Where would the body end up likely?
Africa.
Really? Okay.
I mean, the sharks might eat it too eventually.
There is nothing there. You get, a mile offshore, you're in 1,000 feet of water. It's just, there's nothing there.
Yeah, but how could, there's no way she could
Nobody
get
would've
to the
seen-
open ocean. It's
Yeah.
too rough.
Yeah.
Well, if you cross the island on land, right?
What do you mean? I don't
So,
follow.
we were talking about this possibility yesterday, and of course, this is all speculation, right? But let's say they had an argument on land, okay?
And they weren't in the dinghy.
They
Okay.
weren't in the dinghy. I'm just saying hypothetically,
yeah.
or something happened in the dinghy, and then he ended up back on land. If he went to the other side of the island,
Yep.
where it was really wavy and choppy, and
Could have
rocks,
carried her. Could have carried her
could
body.
he? Yeah, or whatever. You dump the
I hear
body
you.
there in an outgoing tide, is she's going to go to Africa, according to Dave. But is it less likely that a sneaker might float up, or the dry bag?
I mean,
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, it's just interesting that
Here's the thing. There's pounding surf. You got to hear me out there. 20 knots of wind is going to be 6 to 8 footers pounding into that beach.
That's what's probably gonna be stuff there. You're right.
It would be tough for anybody to, I don't care if you're, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to go carrying a body into 8-foot waves, crashing onto rocks too. It's very rocky.
Yeah.
And they'd have to, and then to hope the body would be sucked out even with an outgoing tide.
Yeah.
There's so much force, inertia going in to the beach. I don't know. I think that's a stretch. It's possible.
Do you know if they have surveillance camera footage? Because, I mean, you know that area at the dinghy dock. There's one alleyway down there. It'd be interesting to know if there's any footage that shows the two of them getting into the dinghy, or at least walking out of the Abaco Inn.
Yes,
good point.
there is footage of allegedly of that. Yeah, of them walking out of the Abaco Inn after dinner and heading to the dinghy dock. Yes,
Yeah.
but you never know what happened. Now, I also want to talk about, you guys are experienced licensed captains. Okay, so what I'd like to talk about next, and I'm going to play another clip in a minute here. I'd like to know, and the viewers want to know, what is the experience? What is the captain's responsibilities? Does it extend to the dinghy? And could he have done more? So here, let's play this quick video. And again, it's Brian Hooker, or audio actually, talking to his friend about what happened. So take a listen.
Like I am, and I'm never leaving until I get that woman, and that's all there is to it. So I'm going to just start at one end of the two. You look on the charts, Elbow Cay is across from something called Lover's Cay, and Lover's Cay had a couple houses I tried to reach, but the wind and the tides didn't let me, and I just kind of drifted past them about 1,000 yards away or 500 yards away. And I was just going to break a window, get security out, and then call the cops, but there's no infrastructure. There's no cops on that island. So, and security might just be a blink camera. When I got to the boatyard, it was full of boats, many of them on the hard, and cars. And I thought, well, shit, there's fucking liveaboards here. Nope. I yelled and walked around. It's a big ship, big boatyard, and I was locked in the damn thing. They had the man doors locked, and so I was standing at the gate yelling for help to the house across the street. It was dark, and this is like 3:45 in the morning, and a car went by right by me and stopped, and I was paddling, but
basically the car went by him and stopped, and then kept going. But what he was describing there, Brian Hooker, was after the 8-hour row to Marsh Harbor. This is what happened. Any comments on that?
My first reaction is he's full of baloney. The second thing is, if the theory, and you can see it on the chart on the left, he talked about Lubbers. So Lubbers is that island that's to the west of where the sailboat was moored, so south of where that red line is. If he was trying to row to the docks and the houses at Lubbers, it means he did not get stuck and pushed to the west. In other words, he was not prevented from going south towards the sailboat. If he was actually if he was looking at houses and he was looking at docks on Lubbers, he was already, given that wind direction, already going to get pushed right into that land.
So is it odd to you that he didn't go to Lubbers?
Yeah,
was
like
right
just
there.
go to Lubbers, you know.
Yeah.
If you could see and if it was easy enough for him to get to Lubbers, equidistant back to the entrance to Abaco, and equidistant to the hard that you could walk to Sea Spray Marina over the hill. He knew his options.
That was the closest. Sea Spray Marina was right there.
Yeah.
A skip and a hop from where they were on that dinghy.
Yeah.
And I don't get, if you're an avid boater, how you couldn't row a dinghy. Very easy to row. It's light. It's buoyant. I don't get how he couldn't row a dinghy back to shore. He was 100 yards from shore, maybe 2.
Yep. Claimed he had one broken oar, right? Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, he did have a broken arm?
So what?
That's what I heard
Use
as
it.
well.
Use it and row to save your life.
You can still make it happen.
Yeah.
And honestly, Dave, I'm with you from before. You jump in the water, you grab that painter, and you swim the thing to shore.
Exactly.
I mean, you do whatever it takes to, you head towards your wife. You don't go off into the abyss and wait 8 hours. I mean, I don't even understand it. That's why I really start wondering what happened. Did she fall out, or did he, did they have a dispute? They were both drinking. They obviously have had him in the past. And, and before he claimed she hit him, he had a bloody nose, the police report indicated. Maybe they were having a dispute and she hit him and then he hit her, and she, he might have hit her hard enough where he knocked her out and she fell over the side, which I believe that can happen. People get knocked out very easily. You hit someone blindsided, she didn't see it coming, boom, she gets knocked out, she goes over the side. She's a great swimmer, but guess what? She's unconscious. She's sinking. And that would happen quickly. And if the wind's blowing at 25 knots, say there's a gust, he's going to drift at probably 2 to 3 knots. Okay, that means he's going to go a quarter mile in about 5 minutes. And let's say he's scrambling, he's trying to find the oars, he's trying to get right, because the oars aren't just sitting already ready to go. He's got to find the oars. Oh, one's broken, damn it. Who knows how that happened? Maybe he broke it trying to get it, situated, but he's scrambling, he's trying to get the oars, he's freaking out. And, is he guilty? Sure, but it might be involuntary manslaughter, or second-degree murder. He whacked her and didn't realize, geez, I shouldn't have hit her so hard. And now she's unconscious, because if she's a good swimmer, she's going to shore.
Absolutely.
She's going to go to shore and she's going to stand there and ask for help.
Yep.
So, maybe something like that happened, and he would drift away quickly. And by the time he got, situated, she was underwater, and
Yep.
maybe he did try to save her. Maybe he did jump over and swim around.
Well, there's no evidence. He said he didn't jump overboard at that point.
And
He
maybe
did-
he didn't.
He
Maybe he
did
panicked.
He did say through the anchor, which I also
But
thought.
yeah, that's another thing I want to
all right,
talk
that's
about.
interesting.
So look at this little dinghy. It's kind of good that I have this photograph up, but he had some sort of anchor. You guys are both experienced captains. Was he negligent in throwing that anchor?
Where did he throw it? When did he throw it? Did he claim?
Well,
Right
shortly,
away?
right away after she allegedly fell overboard.
That's a smart move, because it basically keeps him from drifting further away, because again, he's drifting away from her. She's not drifting away from him. He's drifting away from her because the wind is howling. Okay. He's probably, that is actually a smart thing to do, to drop the anchor, because it at least immobilizes the dinghy, so that it's not going to keep drifting at 3 knots, So I get why you would throw the anchor. I don't know that I think I would have jumped in, like Dave said, and tried to, pull the dinghy closer to her, but maybe he, panicked and he just dropped the anchor. But what did he do after that? If he didn't jump in, then what did he do? If he dropped the anchor, I would be jumping in the water, knowing, in other words, I would drop the anchor to immobilize the dinghy, right?
Mhm.
To keep it from drifting away from me, so then I could go and execute a rescue.
Yeah.
That's why I would drop the anchor, is to keep the dinghy from drifting away and then go in the water and start searching.
I think typically you wouldn't, right? like if you're offshore, you're going to do like a Williamson turn, or you're going to start doing circles, or you want to keep moving so you can see. You definitely want to mark the spot, right?
Right.
But in this case, I'd forgotten when we chatted yesterday, Maggie, that the boat wasn't working, right? So he couldn't maneuver the boat.
Right.
If you can maneuver the boat, you maneuver the boat. You try to either get to the person or do the circles, or throw everything you possibly can. So that blue cushion and that green cushion should have shown up somewhere if that thing was rigged out the exact same way. Right? Those things don't just biodegrade overnight.
No.
100%. Did he throw several different flotation devices?
Claimed he threw the dry bag and at least one flotation device. I don't know if it was, either one of those things.
Cushion or something.
Yeah, it was like a flotation cushion
Yeah.
that was thrown in.
Yeah, where's that?
I know. You'd think that would have washed up. So as captains, so here's my thing. There's a lot of speculation, especially online, about this case. Brian Hooker was arrested by the police in the Bahamas, and he was questioned. They boarded his boat. They checked out all the electronics and forensics there, but they didn't have enough probable cause to hold him. So he went off his merry way. And then the U.S. Coast Guard got involved because they do have jurisdiction in this case, and they have a criminal investigation which is ongoing. They also boarded the boat. They interviewed him. They interviewed witnesses. They talked to the bartender at the Abaco Inn. As far as I know, they weren't overserved because, you think maybe they were drunk. But I think unless they find further evidence, it's going to be hard to ultimately prove any type of crime beyond a reasonable doubt. So I'm a former prosecutor, and that's what I think about as these cases come in. I used to work with the police, and we'd say, okay, we have speculation, we have this scant bit of evidence, but is there enough to build a circumstantial case and for me to ultimately go before a jury and prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt? So from what I've gathered so far with all my research, I don't see enough evidence to ultimately go forward with a criminal complaint or, to arrest him again and all that. However, what we were talking about yesterday is ultimately, first of all, we don't have a body, so that presents an issue. But ultimately, can the family bring a civil lawsuit for wrongful death? And yes, they can ultimately do that, but we have some issues. They've got to prove that there was a death first, so that can be difficult because God knows she could have, maybe she disappeared on her own. She was sick of Brian. They had a tumultuous relationship, so she's out there someplace. You never know. But what I want to ask you guys is, Brian is a captain, and that liability may extend to the dinghy and to his wife, Lynette. So do you see any civil liability here?
Well,
Dave, I'll start with you.
I think there's a different liability and different burden of proof if you're a licensed captain with paying customers, like if it was a charter versus a personal thing. But I think at the end of the day, maritime law, Damon, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it would extend to the dinghy. It would extend to the whole experience, the sailboat, the dinghy. If it was under quote unquote his command, then, to me, he was pretty clearly negligent. Now, it's difficult, again, to prove that exact negligence because you didn't see him actually do any of the things. So you can only go by his account of what it was. But he did leave the scene too, right? And did not report it within a reasonable amount of time, which is one of the things that you have to do.
Right.
And he did not. And, it's kind of back to this, both things can't be true at the same time, meaning the wind and current couldn't have been so strong that it separated them and all hell broke loose. And then it took them 7 hours to go 3 miles, right?
Right.
If the wind was whipping and the tide and they separated so fast, he's 2 hours. He is 2 hours to Marsh Harbor. It's 3.5 miles. He's 2 hours. And Now,
Would it be that long? Because he's going with the wind.
yeah, I'm saying maximum, but
Yeah.
he was 7 or 8, right? 7 or
Right.
8.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly. There's a big questionable
Yeah.
section of time that
Yeah.
that doesn't really add up.
And if he was capable with a broken oar of doing donuts out in the middle of the Abaco Bay for 6 hours, he was capable of rowing back to Abaco. So
My question is, why did he, if he dropped the anchor, again, this is, if I would do the same, if I say I was, I realized the oar's broken, I got no engine. I agree with dropping the anchor,
yeah,
but you drop the anchor to make a rescue,
right.
not to just sit there and fumble with your cell phone. Like, what did he do after he dropped the anchor? That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Because that's important. When you start throwing around negligence, it is negligent to just sit there and not act. Dropping the anchor was the right thing to do, but then what did you do? And I think you're right, Dave. He should have reported the rescue immediately. He could have just went right to shore and walked over to the Sea Spray. They have a bar that's open there. I've been to it. That gazebo bars, unless it's not there anymore. They've had so many hurricanes.
Yep.
But there's activity. There were people around.
Yep.
I don't get the whole, I'm going to go to Marsh Harbor, the other side of the bay. It is, with the wind. So my question is, did he anchor, or was he, what was he up to in that 8-hour, interval? Yeah.
And again, he already admitted that he was down on the inside of Lubbers, looking at the houses and docks. So he would have had to have turned and gone northwest to get out, around, and into that wind and current.
Yeah, that doesn't make
It
sense.
doesn't make sense.
Nope, not at all.
And so, Dave, what do you think about his whole story with his cell phone not really working and the whole SIM card?
To me, it sounded like he was just trying to make up a story. It's almost like convincing himself of what the story was.
Okay.
He was
I
already
agree.
defending himself, not really worried about. I don't know. I would have been begging my friend, give me ideas. Tell me what you think. What am I not doing? What else can I think of? Who else can I call?
I can't imagine traveling in the Bahamas and not using WhatsApp. I mean, as a boater, as an avid boater, I mean, everyone knows that is the currency of phone communication. I mean, everyone uses WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Text that's shocking
there, though, as well. So he kind of claimed that WhatsApp's the only thing that works. That's not true.
What else works, Dave?
Cell phones work.
Yeah, just regular text. I didn't use WhatsApp. I haven't used WhatsApp any of the times I've been down there. Now you have to have service, and it sounds like maybe he didn't have that. That's a very easy thing to check. Just call they can get the cell phone company to say, did he get roaming? But I also, I don't know this for sure, but I think if you dial like 511 or 911, the signals are relevant. I think it will. I think if it's an emergency thing, it might override it. I might be wrong on that though. I've never had to do it.
But there is cell phone coverage near the Abaco Inn.
Yeah.
I used it.
We all did.
I remember texting Maggie,
Hurry up, get ready. We're all waiting for you for dinner. You're still getting ready back at the room. Yeah.
No, I remember texting you like, I'm going to walk down here, and everything. The cell phones work fine, and they're not. Again, they're only 100 yards, 200 yards off the beach. I don't get the whole. I think that's a huge red flag, to be honest with you.
I think the technology's there. They should be able to track his phone, see where he was. Right?
I would think so too. And of course, that might be part of the investigation. Maybe they're still getting the forensics there. I mean, obviously, it's an open investigation now, even though we haven't heard anything.
He said his phone had like 20 minutes left of battery life.
20%. Yeah.
20%.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, 20%.
And if it was a decent phone, if she had a decent one, it was in a dry bag. They call them dry bags for a reason. And a lot of phones will tolerate some moisture, right? So I wonder if
they ought to look at her phone.
No.
That's what
Her phone was in the dry bag.
Exactly. So I'm sure that's part of the investigation as well. But it will be interesting to track this case further if anything comes out, but I wouldn't be surprised. So usually a statute of limitations for a civil wrongful death case of negligence, which is a much lower standard than beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, it's just preponderance of the evidence. 3 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised to see the family, especially the daughter, filing some sort of wrongful death suit. But, and then it would ultimately be up to a judge and then ultimately maybe a jury to see, was there negligence on behalf of this captain? And
Yeah.
again, I appreciate anything else that, what should a captain do when boarding having a dinghy like that? So what do you see as far as negligent behavior on that dinghy itself? A broken oar doesn't seem good to me.
No, but that could have snapped in the heat of the moment. He might have been scrambling to try to get the oar in the lock. Sometimes those inflatable dinghies have very cheap aluminum, like they're like almost like plastic oars.
Yeah.
They're not wood. And so who knows when the oar or if it was broken ahead of time. But the fact that he did have a flotation device and he threw it in the water, that's the right thing to do. But the real question is, did he do it? He could have just said that to try to make it seem like he was not being negligent, but he was, it's all very suspicious.
Vague. Yeah, it
Very
is.
suspicious.
And what about, are you required to have a whistle or something like that? Like even if you're in a dinghy traveling from the Abaco Inn to the sailboat, are there any requirements that you guys are aware of? Or would it be negligent not to have a whistle or something?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, under a certain size, the safety requirements go down. But again, there's a question of being responsible for other people and being a responsible boater from a safety standpoint. And you should have some sort of spotlight. You should have the ability to make a sound. And most lanyards have a whistle attached to them, right?
Of course, she had the lanyard. She fell overboard with the lanyard, and that's what shut the engine off.
Right. And if that thing had a whistle on it, I wish we could see it in the picture. If that lanyard had a whistle on it, she would have been capable of, and Sea Spray's within earshot, Abaco is within earshot of a whistle. So,
but again, she's so close to shore, that I really start to wonder: when she fell over, was she conscious?
Yeah.
Because if she was conscious, I feel like she would have swam to shore, no problem, or to the boat. Now,
Right.
if she did swim to the boat and they were in a fight and she was like, screw you, and he did let her swim, that could have happened. And then maybe he realized after the fact, what if she can't get up on the boat? That could have happened. But the fact, her going in the water and then just drifting away and not being able to keep herself afloat, if she's conscious, I don't buy that,
And then there's some other, and some of the witnesses, friends of theirs have been interviewed, and they've all said, we've never seen her wearing that lanyard. He's usually the one, although she looks like she might be the one driving here, but the whole lanyard thing is a little suspicious because people have, and the other thing is the Apple Watch. That's another thing that's come up.
Right.
There is a photograph of her at the Abaco Inn near the pool earlier where some claim you can kind of see a strap to the Apple Watch. I thought it was very blurry. I couldn't tell whether she was wearing that watch, but others are convinced.
Yeah.
So if you have an Apple Watch, that should connect to the data on her phone, plus then to the SAT, right? on the sailboat.
That should give GPS location information.
Yeah. So that's another mystery to this whole thing.
I think back to your question on was he negligent, though. If he was a professional captain on a charter, I think he'd be screwed, right? And I think there's enough to point to negligent behavior, decisions, et cetera, that contributed, to it. And leaving.
That's the negligence right there. Leaving the accident.
Yep. So, I feel bad talking about it this way. I don't know either of these people, and it's sad. If he didn't do anything, he lost his wife. She's gone. The daughter. I feel bad speaking with such conviction about not really knowing. But if you just remove yourself from that emotion and look at, like I said, if it was me in that circumstance, the whole thing just doesn't make sense to me. So anyway.
It doesn't. It's hard to look at this, from a logical viewpoint, because there's so much red tape and gray areas. Like it's and they're both good swimmers. If she wasn't a good swimmer, it would be a complete, in my eyes, a complete different scenario. I'd be, maybe she did drown right away. She panicked, went into shock, but she was a good swimmer.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one for me to get over. But I'm with you, Dave. I mean, it's an awful situation.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to everyone involved, all the family involved. The daughter did make an interesting point. Not to meander too long here, but the daughter made an interesting point about the phone call when Brian called her to share the news the day after. She claimed it was a very kind of abrupt, quick phone call that she kind of, I think she described it as he dropped a bomb and then and then the phone call ended. Which I thought was interesting. He called her up and just said, basically your mom's missing. I'll have more information, stand by kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's just horrible. And one thing, you did make both of you have made a point that I want to address here. These are all allegations, okay? What if his story is true? As crazy as it may sound, sometimes things happen. If it's true, if she accidentally fell off and disappeared, can you imagine? I feel like the media sometimes blows it up, like creates suspicion. And by the way, he has been getting death threats. I can't imagine, he can't go on social media anymore, but he is already guilty in the court of public opinion, which really isn't right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've had a problem with that all along. As a lawyer, I try to look at both sides, and even I come across as saying, well, he's suspicious, this and that. But then I always have to back up and say, wait a minute, you know what? He was arrested, then they let him go. There's not enough evidence. And, when do you give people the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah.
But, certainly the media isn't and won't. And they won't let this go. It'll go on for years. So that's one little thing that I wanted to add as well.
Yeah.
But anyway,
But,
yes, go ahead, Dave.
I mean, if that was you that happened to, or my daughter, or whatever, I would be given these circumstances. I'd like I said, I'd be down there right now. I would never let it go because it makes no sense. Right.
Yeah. A lot of people think he's too calm.
Yeah, but I agree with everything you said. I haven't met. I have no idea who they are. I feel horrible for the circumstances and all of them. So,
the only other scenario that I've come up with, this is a little outside the box. Is,
it's okay.
Has everyone seen the movie Sleeping with the Enemy? I think it's called, with Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
Where she, if you remember, she jumps over she pretends she falls, right? And then she makes an desperate escape from her controlling, abusive husband. This is a reach, but hey, it's very peculiar that a great swimmer just vanished.
Yep.
Okay. And maybe if Maggie, what she said earlier, maybe if he really is innocent, maybe this is something where she's camped out on an island. She sees the Coast Guard helicopter coming. She hides in the bush,
Yeah.
Never know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard place
to throw that out there just to throw a little more gas in the fire.
Yeah. You really never know. People do disappear.
Yep.
Intentionally.
Right. But it's hard to do. Okay. I have worked with the Fugitive Task Force when I covered the Whitey Bulger case, and it's harder to disappear nowadays than ever before because obviously you have GPS tracking and everything like that with your phones, but you also have to have IDs. She'd have to figure out how to get off the island. She'd have to have help and money. So you need money and ID in order to escape. So it's not as easy as you may think.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate. Big shout out to Captain Damon Sacco and of course to Captain David Crompton. I appreciate your help on this, and the viewers do as well. And again, thank you so much, everyone, for watching the Margaret McLean Show. Please subscribe, press the like button, and share the episode with your friends. Well,
Thanks for having us.
yes, and have a wonderful weekend.
Have a great day. Thank you.
See you, Dave.